Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Okay, so we are back to. Did I share my screen yet? No? Okay. So chapter 47, that is, anyone remembers what is the chapter 47? Preaching in America part 2, right? Yeah, I don't know why it says preaching in America part 2. Anyway, so any reflections from yesterday? Anything we can recall?
That last part I had read yesterday was Prabhupada talking about the devotees that have given up Krishna consciousness and gone back to being under the illusion, to being under the spell of Maya, essentially. And he's saying, the guy's talking about how he has freedom, and Prabhupada's like, you don't have freedom. You're still going to get old. You're still going to die. There's no freedom there.
Rishi.
Yeah.
Apparently, it appears like he was a sannyas or something before. I don't know. Sounded like. And if anyone remembers, he was a sannyas. No.
Yeah, it was mentioned that he had taken sannyas but he gave up, and then Prabhupada was disheartened to see him.
Yeah. Sannyas, right? Yes. Sannyas is a very big thing. How Prabhupada had given big of an emergency, and then he totally collapsed. Okay, then what else? Did we read this one? Rishi, yeah. Okay, this is that part. Anything else before we start reading? Nipa, you more memory test? Anything else you recall what we read?
We read about the Rath Yatra in San Francisco, where they had
Golden Gate Bridge.
Golden Gate Bridge, and I think a lot of 10,000 people came there, and then some of the wheels were made of metal, and they had issues. And they barely made it to the end, and only Prabhupada was on the cart where it was wood, and Prabhupada mentioned that old is cold, and so he mentioned like the old ones are good.
And Prabhupada met all these other religious groups from India. Yogi Bhajan or something, right? Yogi Bhajan, a Sikh guru and other people.
They were the warriors, like they were classified as warriors.
Right. Generally, they're warrior class mostly. Yeah. Okay. So Prabhupada then spoke at length for Rishi's benefit as well as the benefit of other devotees in the room. Persons under the influence of Maya, he said, declare that they are free. The drug addict or the drunkard thinks he is free to lie down on the street. Yet his actions involve him in the strict laws of material nature. The outlaw declares himself free from the laws of the state, but he is put into jail. What is the use of this saying he is free? Therefore, Krishna says, Prabhupada explained, whatever little freedom you have got, just surrender that freedom to me. Prabhupada's comments on false freedom were to the point. Within 2 hours of his arrival, he had already exposed the Laguna Beach mystic. Rishi continued to smile and argue, but before Prabhupada, he was just another youth with no real answers. Prabhupada was not interested in debating. He wanted to help his disciple. Rishi, however, was using whatever freedom he had to defy Krishna's representative, trusting instead in his youth, his intoxication, and his music. So Prabhupada figured out, looks like he's still intoxicating, taking intoxication. The door opened. These are some professors, Srila Prabhupada announced a devotee, who form part of our congregation. Prabhupada greeted the new guest and asked that they sit up front on cushions. I was talking with this boy about freedom, said Prabhupada. So I said there is no freedom for us. We are always dependent. What is your opinion about it? One of the professors said he agreed, and Prabhupada continued speaking. He talked with the professor for more than an hour. Near the end, Upendra's 3-year-old son, Soumya, walked up to Prabhupada from the back of the room. Prabhupada gave him some money that was on the desk, and the boy ran back to his mother and gave her the money. Yes, when I was young, Prabhupada reminisced, if I got money, I would take it to my mother. But then, when I would become angry at her, I would demand it back. Sometimes I would steal money from my mother's purse and go watch Charlie Chaplin movies. Now, his favorite scene was in a film called Hard Times. He said, when Charlie Chaplin sat down at a table with a knife and fork to eat a boot. So Prabhupada, they're continuing his argument. He's not debating, he's just helping his disciple Rishi. He has his own arguments. He thinks it's freedom. And Prabhupada understood that. He's still going back to intoxication. Prabhupada, what kind of freedom is? You take this intoxication, you lie on the road, and police will take you in. That's the freedom. So he didn't have a logical answer, the Rishi, Prabhu. During that time, looks like professors came. They said they've been introduced as that they're part of the organization, part of the community. Did they? Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So they said, sorry, here, yeah. Who form part of our congregation? Who form part of our congregation? Basically, they're part of the congregation. Prabhupada got them asked them their opinion. So is it? Do we have a real independence? Professors agreed that we don't have any independence. So now Prabhupada says that his childhood, Upendra looks like he had a 3-year-old son. Prabhupada gave him some money. Prabhupada shares that when I was a child, I used to take the money and I used to give my mother. But when I was upset, I was demanded to give me my money. Anyone has done that? I also has done like that. My mother used to keep the money. Then I would demand, okay, give me my money. Prabhupada used to go to Charlie Chaplin movie. That time, Hard Times, he said. That time movie was there in his time also. It was childhood means, I think I'm sure it is 20s, right? 1920s or 1910. I didn't know movie was there that early. Okay.
1896, yeah.
Yeah, 1896 is born. So I'm hoping will be 1910, right? At least it will be 12, 13 or 14 years before he goes. AJ, you can read.
Sure. San Diego, July 27, 1975. Srila Prabhupada rode down the San Diego Freeway in the pre-dawn darkness on his way to San Diego to attend a festival in Balboa Park. On the way, he passed through San Clemente, where former President Richard Nixon was staying. Prabhupada had followed Nixon's exposure and resignation and had often mentioned it in his lectures, sometimes as an example of how even the most powerful men are subject to anxiety and loss, sometimes to illustrate the need for proper training in the 4 natural social orders. A devotee mentioned that Mr. Nixon lived here with no position, scorned by his countrymen. Then you should go and preach to him, Srila Prabhupada said. Since the man had lost everything and was lamenting, he said he might be receptive to hearing about the absolute truth. Prabhupada had attempted a similar approach to Mahatma Gandhi. At Balboa Park, Prabhupada was pleased with the devotees' booths and colorful tents and the stages they had erected in the meadow. He had just begun addressing the large crowd when a man in the audience began shouting. Prabhupada asked what he was saying, and a devotee explained, Srila Prabhupada, the man says he wants to have sex more than once a month. He is creating a disturbance, said Prabhupada into the microphone. After a tense moment, Prabhupada continued his lecture. So as this man is talking about sex, so is this whole material world is enchanted by sex. Taking the shouted protest as a new focus for his speech, Srila Prabhupada quoted Prahalad Maharaj's statement that all material entanglement begins from sexual enjoyment, which in comparison to transcendental pleasures is paltry and abominable. But real happiness, Prabhupada asserted, is above the senses. Whatever we enjoy with the gross senses is temporary, but permanent enjoyment is transcendental. So this man, he continues, he was suggesting he wants sex at least once in a month. Yes, that is allowed. 5 days after the wife's menstrual period, the husband and wife can have sex for begetting rightful children. Prabhupada used the Vedic technical term Garbhadanha Samskara to describe the process of purifying sex within the marriage. The devotees were astonished that before a crowd of sexually liberated Southern Californians, Prabhupada was espousing responsible, legitimate sex. Usually he discussed such matters, if at all, in letters to householders. But if the Americans were intent on sex, then Prabhupada would let them have it. But he stressed responsible, restricted sex. Otherwise, by irresponsible sex, one has to suffer. Sex life is not denied, Prabhupada said, but one must take responsibility for sex life. Otherwise, he becomes entangled in so many sinful activities. You can have sex life once in a month. That is prescribed, because a woman has once in a month menstrual period. So sex life is meant for simply begetting nice children, not for sense gratification. If it is in the regulative form, the world may not become hell. It is irregulative form, then the whole world will be hell. Sex life is not denied. Sex life is not denied, but in a regulated form so that you can get nice population and live very happily. So Prabhupada's heading to Balboa Park, and he's going down the freeway, and he's near San Clemente, where Richard Nixon was living after he resigned, and he says that Prabhupada used to use Nixon as an example of how even that the most powerful people, the most important people in society, still have to deal with anxiety and loss, or that they need proper training in the social orders. So one of the devotees says to him that Nixon lives here. He's got his countrymen don't like him. He's got no job. He just sits there all day. So Prabhupada says, well, you should go preach to him. He when you have nothing, he might be receptive to hearing about Krishna. And as we remember, Prabhupada tried the same thing with Mahatma Gandhi in earlier letters, or in earlier readings. We talked about the letters he sent Gandhi and the conversations he attempted to have with him. So Prabhupada gets to the festival, and the devotees set up nice booths and tents and a stage, and he begins talking to the crowd, and there's a guy in the crowd stands up and starts yelling that he wants to have sex more than once a month. And Prabhupada says, he's causing trouble, this guy. So who knows what happens. I guess they quieted him down, and then Prabhupada starts in, he takes his lecture in a different direction, and he starts talking about sex and how how all material entanglement starts with, begins with sexual enjoyment, which when you compare that to transcendental pleasure, it's worthless. He says real happiness is above the senses, and everything everything enjoyed with the gross senses is temporary and fleeting, but permanent enjoyment is transcendental. So he says, yes, this guy, he wants to have sex at least once in a month. Sure, that's fine. Here's when you do it. And you do it solely for the purpose of having, creating children. And the rest of the devotees were kind of surprised, because normally he wouldn't talk about this in front of a crowd, especially Southern California in the middle of, the free love era where everybody was, sleeping with everybody else all the time. He would normally keep these kind of subjects to letters, just to householders, but he said, look, if this is what these guys want to talk about, this is what we're going to talk about. So he said, yeah, you can have sex, but it's going to be restricted, and it needs to be responsible. So again, he says, he goes on to say, it's not denied, you just have to be responsible. And you can do it once a month, and it's solely for having children, not for sense gratification. And if it's, as long as you do it in a regulated, in that strict fashion, the world's not going to become hellish as a result. But otherwise, it will be. And again, he reiterates, it's not denied. It's allowed, but in a strict form, so you can have a nice population of Krishna conscious children, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
I had this question before also. This is it is a little confusing the way this is on one side. Is it saying once in a month, or is it only saying for children only? You're on mute, Prabhu.
Yeah.
You know what I am trying to.
Right.
Even
Yeah.
because even in the beginning also, early on, many years back, I was given this instruction by one devotee. So just that now I'm reading, in particularly in Prabhupada's Lilamrita. So, the both cannot go together. Either you are having to beget children.
That's right.
How in the guide, what should we, based on this, how should we guide others?
Here's the thing. One is once in a month for the purpose of begetting, because that's the conducive time to produce the children. After the menstrual period of certain days, after 5 days or something, right? So not once in a month for that purpose during that period. Then once done, with their children. Actually, unfortunate thing is, devotees also not having children. They should have many Krishna conscious children. That's the unfortunate thing. We need the devotee children is needed. So Prabhupada is really not restricting, but he's restricting that, stopping the conceiving of parties, thus he's restricting. And then if one is not wanting the children, then one should refrain from it, and one should work gradually in stopping the sex life. The similar question I had a long time back asked Ravindra Prabhu, long time. I was thinking that this goes ever naturally. He said, no, it has to be worked. So what, it is the fact, if not controlled, it doesn't make one very strong in devotional service. That's why Prabhupada made it very clear that, yeah, one is allowed on the purpose of when you need to beget the children. But eventually one should stop engaging, because determination will not come. And there are many reasons. It makes one spiritually weak, physically and spiritually weak, both it will make. I don't know if I answered. Yeah, if you're confusing that, yeah, when there's no purpose, then eventually that has to be avoided, and it can be worked very gradual. It can be worked very gradual to stop.
Yeah, Prabhu, I understand. It's just the way it is written is a little says once in a month. So I was.
Yeah, that's it's after the menstrual period, that's the time
Limit to once in a month, and you can so.
Sorry.
There's no end to once in a month, right? Many
Yeah.
months.
Oh, no. Yeah, once in a month means only for the both has to be together. Once in a month, and only the purpose of begetting children. No, not. Yeah, that's right. No, people should not take in that way that it's no. It's only for the purpose of begetting children. Um, However, at least one can work on that direction gradually. So that's my
But
understanding.
had, many years back given that instruction. So I just
Yeah,
remember reading this. So
right. No, until and unless they want the progeny. Um, until and unless they want the progeny, so that's the regulation. And once they don't want have conceived the progeny, they don't have to.
work towards stopping permanent.
Yeah, right. And as a devoted children are needed, but just like everybody's following, one child, two child, that's a big issue. While I was studying about the 10 things successful uh, to grow is one is the converts, just like we all come under converts, you and me, right? So our children come in they're naturally born in the moment. So any religious organization grows is when this also is part of it, just like other organizations. That's a different subject, but we need Krishna devotees are needed, very much needed. So as long as we can make them devotee and we can bring to this world, that's why it's a responsibility purpose. It's a responsibility, not just sex that comes just like that. Okay, we'll move. Yeah, you're ready. Yeah, you can read. You can.
Okay. Es-
This is
Especially,
the. Yeah, yeah.
especially at the present moment, if you can produce children to become Krishna conscious, that would be a great service to the Lord because we want a Krishna conscious population. Otherwise, this world is going to hell. There were great empires like the Roman, Greek, and later on the Mughal Empire, the British Empire. Then there was Napoleon, Hitler, Mussolini. So all these powerful empires and men have come and gone. Only a name is there now. Nothing is remaining. So I came to your country, America. I decided to come here because I heard your country is very nice. And when I came here, I saw actually that your country is very nice, your cities, your buildings, your men also. Because mostly my students are Americans and they help me very kindly to push on this movement. So I have studied the American life very nicely. They have a good heart. The only thing that is wanting is Krishna consciousness. For want of this Krishna consciousness, despite all your opulences, you are becoming confused and frustrated. I heard that out of three, one man is patient of a psychiatrist. Why? Why are you unhappy? Why should you be unhappy? You have got everything, enough food, land, money, intelligence. Why should you be unhappy? The cause of this you should try to find out. The cause is that without Krishna consciousness, without God consciousness, nobody can be happy. The outdoor audience was now quiet and attentive. Prabhupada spoke for about 40 minutes, ranging over different areas of Krishna conscious philosophy, and concluded with a request to the American men and women to seriously cooperate in Krishna consciousness and thereby find happiness. His talk was greeted with cheers, and the devotees continued to host the crowd throughout the afternoon, chanting and dancing and distributing prasadam. An Indian visitor was explaining to Prabhupada why India had to build up nuclear weapons and armed forces, but Prabhupada disagreed. The reason he said was the dearth of genuine Kshatriyas. There were no more men of courage, therefore, a woman was now in charge. In the newspapers also had been much coverage of a US merchant ship, the Mayakvi, which, when sailing within the 12-mile limit of Cambodia, had been seized without warning. President Ford had taken a strong stand, sending in the US Marines. 15 Marines had been killed and 50 wounded in recovering the vessel, and the US had bombed Cambodia. It was proper, Prabhupada said, for the US to take a strong stand in defending its citizens abroad. Yes, America should be strong, he asserted. But first of all, they should become Krishna conscious. If they were actually a Krishna conscious nation, they should declare, if you touch the hair of one of our men, there will be a fight. So Prabhupada is explaining here that we should have children to be, it's important, and that devotees should produce children to become Krishna conscious, and that would be a great service to the Lord, because the world needs Krishna conscious population. And at the present moment, and he is giving great empires. So many people have come and gone, like the Roman, Greek, Mughal empires, the British empires, there's Napoleon, Hitler, and several others. They all came and have gone, and all is remaining is their name. Nothing is remaining. All the empires have gone. And then Prabhupada goes on to describe how wonderful America is, and that the cities are wonderful, the buildings are nice, people are very nice, and most of his students were all Americans, and they were so kindly helping Prabhupada to push on the Krishna consciousness movement. And so Prabhupada, had studied American life very nicely. He concluded they have, people here, the Americans have a good heart, and the only thing missing was Krishna consciousness. Despite all the richness in this country, all the opulences, people are confused and frustrated. And so true that 1 out of 3 people are psychiatric patients. Why? In spite of all having so much of food, land, money, intelligence, people are still unhappy. The cause is that they're lacking Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, and without that, nobody in this material world can be happy. And now the outdoor audience are all attentive, and Prabhupada spoke for about 40 minutes, in different topics in Krishna consciousness, and concluded, requesting the American men and women to seriously cooperate with this movement and take up the process and find happiness. And his talk was greeted with cheers, and devotees distributed prasadam, chanted all afternoon, with the crowd chanting and dancing. And then an Indian visitor was talking to Prabhupada and was explaining why India had built up nuclear weapons and armed forces. Prabhupada disagreed and said that, the reason we had to build nuclear weapons was because of lack of genuine Kshatriyas. There were no courageous people. And then in the newspapers, there was coverage of the US merchant ship. It was seized without warning by Cambodia, and then President Ford took a strong stand, and those 15 Marines were killed and 50 wounded, but that merchant ship was recovered, and then US bombed Cambodia. And Prabhupada, agreed with that strong stand that US took in defending its citizens in Cambodia. And he asserted again that America should be strong, but most importantly, before that America should become Krishna conscious. And then, if once they become Krishna conscious nation, then they should declare that, that even if you touch the hair of one of the American people, then there will be a fight.
Nice. Anyone remembers what is the Ford? Who is that Ford? Who is president? Yeah, I don't know. Anyone knows that? I didn't know some Ford was president.
What about Gerald Ford?
Yeah, who is the president here? Ford?
Yeah, it was Gerald Ford. I believe he was right. He was Nixon's VP. No, he wasn't. That was Spiro Agnew. Yeah, just Gerald Ford. I don't know too much about him other than
Okay, he's nothing to do with Henry Ford, right?
Nah, no, I don't. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some relation, but I don't think that was his claim to fame.
Right. Nice. And here Prabhupada also stress, I mean, the stress that children needed, Krishna conscious children needed, right? That's very much. And one more item, it's interesting. It's 1970s. It says, I hear that uh, out of three, one man is psychiatrist. So it's like uh, real problem from since long time because of the environment problem, because of materialism, I think, and also because of I don't know, because of the weather and all these things, right? Why they would go for psychiatry? If that time 1 in 3, I don't know what's happening now. So we have to get the statistics.
I just was looking up, Prabhu.
Mhm.
It says 1 in 5 Americans have a mental illness.
Now,
Yeah.
I won't doubt because of the way, like, because of so many reasons.
So many people, yes, Prabhu, when we go out, also we meet, especially in book distribution. And I have seen this in other cities also, when we travel, especially big cities.
Hmm.
You know, it was interesting in Chicago downtown. I just remembered now because of psychiatrist. I was went on work, and I was walking back to my hotel, and found I was talking to few people, and then one
Hmm.
of them was an Indian body, okay, and he was standing outside a tall building. In the initially he was very rude, and he was looking at me like a beggar. What are you begging on the street like this with books? How much you want? This was his first comment.
Hmm.
But I was very, you know, patient and tolerant and explained to him little bit. And then slowly, he opened up to me. I happened to chat for half an hour with him on the street. And he, you know what? He said, I am going through the worst phase of my life with my wife. And he was all smelling alcohol, very educated PhD guy. And he says, I am going through mental depression, going through divorce. I have an appointment at 5:45 p.m. I came an hour early.
Hmm.
No, he took a Gita, and gave a $20 donation. So it just I'm just and even in Newark, so many people. I think we talked about social workers in our strategic
Hmm.
meeting, right? So many people are having depression, and many people.
I mean, I'm not surprised, because I really can sense. Many times I say, why only 1 in 3? Why not, why 1 in 5? It should be at least 4 in 5.
Yes,
Because
mental illness, but there may be other categories also. In mental illness, they say one.
everything makes eventually the mental illness. That's just a proper. What is madman? Madman is sum total of all this. You remember? So it is going to make the way world is, and it's going to come up very soon. If AJ can help with connecting some social workers, we have some connection with peace team. Maybe we should schedule some meeting in. There are peace. Um, those people looking for peace, definitely they are sensing there's a need for this. We should have some meetings, online meetings we should schedule. I think it's a better. Let's work with meetings with different teams, leaders, and see how we can help.
Yeah, social workers, this DHSS, this social worker is a big thing
Yeah.
in US, in Delaware also, the DHSS.
Yes. Oh, DSS is a social worker, that is. DSS. Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, we can really.
Health and social, this thing.
Right. We can work on really offline to give people who really need it, who desperately need it.
We put that as one of our
agenda. But now I think good time if you can work off and online, have a meetings with ourselves, how to proceed, then connect, invite other people, leaders of that society who's leading that, see if they can come and some of us can work with them and see if we can do something for them.
yeah. And then this whatever we just read, this what I just read, I think is a very powerful piece of literature. Uh, that
Hmm.
you know present this from a scriptural point of view. Also, what Prabhupada is just what we just read. I read
Hmm.
so nice. He's describing his experience with American people, and he's
Hmm.
talking. This stands for the values of America of standing strong, fighting. This is. I think it will resonate well, right? AJ, what do you think?
I missed the last part there. Sorry.
No, the section which we read
Yeah.
about the situation in America. So he's saying there's a very similar conversation we begin with social workers.
Yeah. No, I caught that part. Yeah. Um, I mean, there's definitely opportunities for outreach and between social workers and mental health professionals and things like that. Um, there's plenty of opportunity there, especially um, also when you start looking at at things like addiction and things like that. There's a bhakti path, right? That can be taken as part of that process. As when you get into like 12-step programs, and one of those steps is find a higher power, right? Acknowledge your higher power. That higher power, it can be Krishna, right? It can be and I know through that Wisdom of the Sages podcast, they've started a bhakti recovery group, and it kind of handles a lot of that social work aspect as well for people, to kind of get their lives in order on that front. So yeah, I think there's definitely opportunities there.
Yeah, actually, we don't. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree. Also, we don't even have to go to that higher level and higher platform of Krishna consciousness or God consciousness. Just on the platform of, how to deal with mental stress and anxiety,
Mhm.
how to just, be peaceful and how to control the mind. Just this topics and the connection with the scriptures. Of course, gradually we want to
Yeah, yeah, and
explore, but I'm saying just that itself can resonate well with people.
and that's a conversation I've had with some others, right? Is when talking about Krishna consciousness with them, and I said even if because I have a lot of friends that are atheists or agnostic, and they're they don't they don't buy into that. But I said a lot of the information is just practical, right? It just makes sense, even if you strip out the spirituality from it. Just the mindfulness and things like that are incredibly helpful,
Yep.
and just the practical life advice that you get as well. Like, yes, you're right. Like, the goal obviously is ultimately would be, yes, and also come to Krishna consciousness, but the information is universal, right? Even if they don't take to that, the information's still helpful. You're 100% right.
Thank you so much. Nipa?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I start from Srila Prabhupada spoke strongly, giving the devotees a vision of powerful America leading the world in Krishna consciousness, and this stirred within them hopes for a pure patriotism, such as in the ancient Vedic culture, when the world had been ruled by God conscious leaders. The next morning, before going to the airport, Srila Prabhupada took a walk at Balboa Park. Hearing the sweet singing of birds, he said they were happy. They just take the fruits and they are singing in the morning, he said. Rameshwara. But when we tell people that they may take their next birth as an animal or bird, they say that's all right because these creatures are happier than the humans. Prabhupada. But because you are rascal, you do not know that you can become more happy. You can go back home, back to Godhead, that you do not know. Devotees like to bring before Srila Prabhupada all kinds of topics for his comment. Conversations would jump from one thing to another as devotees sometimes brought up horrendous examples of contemporary degradation or sometimes tested their own doubts by posing as agnostics. Or sometimes they would simply bring to Prabhupada's attention ordinary sights and sounds. Whatever the topic, Prabhupada showed the devotees how to see things from the transcendental perspective. And thus he also showed to them his own purity and humanness. When a devotee told Prabhupada that Balboa was the first man to see the Pacific, Prabhupada at first seemed impressed, but a moment later he scoffed. Everyone was already there, that they do not know. The Pacific and Atlantic Oceans are mentioned in the Kalidasa Kavi's book Kumara Sambhava. They are all mentioned Pacific, Atlantic Oceans. These fools do not know anything. They say I am the first man to come, as if before him there was no man. Just see. Prabhupada complimented the devotees on the previous day's festival in the park and advised them to hold such festivals every day. You are so rich, he said laughingly. You can do it. A continual festival. Tell them, come on, take prasadam, chant Hare Krishna, just like what is that? You told me. Continual massage. So Srila Prabhupada had spoke strongly to the devotees, giving a powerful, giving a vision of powerful America leading to Krishna consciousness. He stirred the hopes of pure patriotism when the world was ruled by God conscious leaders. And the next morning, Prabhupada was going to airport. He took a walk alongside the Balboa Park, and he heard the birds singing sweetly, and they were happy. And they just take the fruits and they are singing in the morning, Prabhupada said. And Rameshwara said, but when we tell people that they may come in their next birth as animal or birth, they say that's all right because these creatures are happier than the humans. And Prabhupada said, because you are a rascal, you do not know that you can be more happy, you can go to Godhead, and that you do not know. And devotees liked they brought many kinds of topics, all kinds of topics in front of Prabhupada for his comment. And conversations would jump from one thing to another as devotees kind of brought up their horrendous examples of degradation and they also posted doubts of being agnostics. And sometimes they simply bring to Prabhupada's attention some ordinary sights and sounds. So whatever the topic given, Prabhupada always showed the devotees how to see things from a transcendental perspective. And he also showed his own purity and humanness. And Prabhupada uh, told that when Prabhupada was told that Balboa was the first man to see the Pacific, Prabhupada was impressed, but later he said that these are all given in Kalidasa's Kavi book Kumara Sambhava. They are all mentioned about Pacific, Atlantic Oceans. These are the fools who do not know anything about it. And then they say that I'm the first man to come, as if before him there was no man existing. Just see about it. And then Prabhupada complimented devotees on the previous day's festival in the park. And he also advised that we should hold such things every day. And he said, you are rich, you can do it. Continual festival and come on, take prasadam chant Hare Krishna should be done every day. Just like what is that? Who told me we do it? We should do the same thing. Continual massage.
That was fun, isn't it? Everybody, they see first time. What is that? Columbus discovered America? Columbus? That's why this is called Columbus Day, right? Isn't it a nonsense? He discovered America as if like no one knows in America. Bhagavatam already is mentioned, and everybody knew. Mahabharata time, everybody knew on different times. But this is celebrating Columbus Day. Is Columbus Day is to commemorate the discovery of America by Columbus? Am I right?
Kind of, sort of. That's the idea, but I don't. It's not a very popular holiday anymore.
No, it used to be. So they're waking up. Hmm?
Yeah,
America is waking up after making whole world. I noticed that general offices give 10 holidays in approximately 10 holidays in a year, right? So holidays in a year. So when you look into it, what is the holiday? There's nothing to do with holiday. It's Columbus Day, President's Day, Labor Day, this day, that day. There is holiday. Yeah. So all holidays gone, spiritual days are gone. Now humans are putting their names in these days. Um, LGBT day, this day, French day, that day. So many things. Making. Mhm. Now following America, everybody's even India also came Labor Day. Anyone knows? I heard India has a Labor Day. I heard. I don't know if the whole country is following, but they're following. Okay. Cycling too.
Prabhupada complimented the devotees on the previous day's festival in the park and advised them to hold such festivals every day. You are so rich, he said laughingly. You can do it. Continual festival. Tell them, come on, take prasadam, chant Hare Krishna, just like what is that? Who told me? Continual massage. Tamal Krishna Goswami. Yes, they have 24-hour massage parlors. 24 hours, Prabhupada said laughingly. Similarly, 24 hours free prasadam. Come on, but they are not hungry, not for that. While walking to a meadow, they came upon a man standing on his head. Is this our man? Prabhupada asked. The devotees laughed and replied, no, yoga. He wants to be immortal, said Rameshwara. No, said Prabhupada, this keeps them healthy. Tamal Krishna, it's good for the body. Prabhupada, yes. Shirasana, it is called, sitting on the head. Shirasana, Padmasana, Yogasana, there are so many asanas. Tamal Krishna, we don't practice those. Yes, we have no time from sleeping, said Prabhupada sarcastically. The devotees laughed at his cutting remark. Otherwise, Prabhupada continued, this is not bad, this is not bad. It keeps good health. This is Yogasana. Hearing Prabhupada's surprising praise of Hatha Yoga, a devotee asked the inevitable. So, if we have time, can we do that? By now, they had finished their walk and had arrived back at their car. Srila Prabhupada chuckled, as if aware that he was being baited with a controversial question. Hare Krishna, he said on getting into the car. He added, not required. Dallas, July 28, 1975. Swami, why are you here? Asked a reporter at the Dallas Fort Worth airport. This is my home, said Srila Prabhupada. The reply delighted his disciples. I have got so many children, grandchildren, so I have come to see them. Srila Prabhupada had written about Dallas Gurukula in his commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Krishna consciousness movement he had written was training a new generation of Vaishnavas in his own school in Dallas, Texas. More than 100 boys and girls were now enrolled, and Srila Prabhupada liked to visit here whenever he toured the United States. Here, as in other ISKCON projects in the US, he involved himself little in the management, but he visited, making himself available to the teachers who were always ready with questions, since there was no precedent in the West for Krishna conscious education. And since the devotees wanted to wanted to develop the school just as Prabhupada desired, they felt they had to ask him about curriculum, teaching methods, hygiene, recreation, and so on. So here, Prabhupada basically he asked the devotees there to hold those festivals that they had in the park every day. And he says you should do like continuous festival. Basically, just take prasadam, chant Hare Krishna. And he's comparing that to like the 24-hour massage parlors. So he says we should have 24 hours free prasadam, and and basically when they walk down the road, they see a man standing on his head. Prabhupada asks, is he our man? The devotees say no, and Rameshwara says he wants to be an immortal, and Prabhupada says that this is yoga, sirasana. Um, and it says it keeps them healthy, and he explains, he talks
Sirsasana. Sirsa. Sirsasana.
yeah,
Sirsasana.
I think a little bit down, Prabhu. I think that is yes, Sirsasana. And then he tells about that many other asanas, Padmasana, Yogasana, and he says they are good for the body. They keep the body healthy. And Tamal Krishna asks, we don't practice those. And Prabhupada replies sarcastically that we have no time from sleeping itself. And Prabhupada says that this is not bad, and it keeps good health. And hearing this, a devotee asks, if we have time, can we do yoga? Prabhupada basically he chuckles and he answers that Hare Krishna and not required. And then we come to Dallas, July 20th, 1975. When asked by a reporter like why he is here in Dallas, Prabhupada says it is his home, and he has many children and grandchildren. And he also has a Gurukul there. And whenever the goal is to train a new generation of Vaishnavas with a Gurukul in the US. And there are 100 boys and girls who are enrolled. And Prabhupada would like to visit whenever he toured the US. And like other projects in the US, he's not involved in the management, but he makes himself available to the teachers because they have many questions. And this was the first time that in the West there was a Gurukul, and they always wanted to ask him about curriculum, teaching methods, hygiene, and recreation, and so on.
Vijayanand Prabhu. That is again a bold answer from Prabhupada. It's my home. What do you mean, like, why you came? It's my home. I have so many children. I have so many grandchildren. Hundreds. So nothing surprised. Vijayanand Prabhu?
Yeah. In the 100-degree weather, the schoolboys wore no shirts, and Srila Prabhupada ran the electric fan in his room. As soon as he arrived in his quarters, he asked that all the children and adults come into his room, and one by one they entered his room, held out a hand, and Prabhupada gave them a large rasagulla. That evening, he sat in a rocking chair on the lawn behind the temple, while devotees fanned him with a large peacock fan, and locusts droned loudly in the trees. He sat there with his disciples amidst many thriving tulsi plants. Listening to a reading from the Krishna book, this was as much as a lesson in how to conduct a Gurukula as were his answers to the teacher's intricate questions. At Gurukula, everything should be based on chanting and hearing about Krishna. Brahmananda Swami was reading about Krishna's rescuing his beloved Rukmani when suddenly Srila Prabhupada interrupted and said that when they had been escaping on Krishna's chariot and the other princes had been attacking, Rukmani had taken the reins and had driven the chariot. Krishna had taken his bow and arrows and had defeated his opponents. The devotees were amazed. Many of them were keen students of Krishna book, and nowhere was that particular detail mentioned. Never before had any of them heard of Rukmani taking the reins, nor had they ever thought of her in that way. But Prabhupada assured them that she had fearlessly driven Krishna's chariot during the fight. While Prabhupada was speaking, Dayananda, the Gurukula headmaster, stretched out his leg to find a more comfortable position, and Prabhupada turned to him and said sternly, "Do not put your feet near Tulsi, she is pure devotee." When Brahmananda read a prayer in Krishna's book describing Krishna as the creator of the material elements, Prabhupada spoke up. If we do not accept that Krishna made the sky, he challenged, then who made it? The blue of the Tetsa sky was now fading into twilight, and gusts and devotees alike looked up at the sky and then back to Prabhupada. According to Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna made the sky. Bhumir apo nalo vayukam. So we should study like this. Aham sarvasya prabhava. The sky is the greatest material thing, but he created it. In this way, study Krishna, not just studying Krishna with the gopis, then you will misunderstand. But the more you understand Krishna, the more you will become his staunch follower. Unauthorized persons never paint Krishna creating the sky. they always want to see Krishna dancing with the gopis, and in this way, they try to support their own lusty activities. So in that 100-degree weather, the schoolboys in the Gurukul, they did not wear any shirts, and Prabhupada had run the electric fan in his room. As soon as he arrived in his quarters, he asked all the children and adults to come into his room, and after they came out, Prabhupada gave them a large rasagulla, and that evening he sat in a rocking chair on the lawn behind the temple, and the devotees fanned him with a large peacock fan, and the locusts droned loudly in the trees, and Prabhupada sat there with the disciples among the many thriving tulsi plants, and he was listening to a reading from Krishna book. And this was like a lesson how to conduct a Gurukula, and as well as his answers to the teacher's questions. And at Gurukula, everything he mentioned that it should be based off chanting and hearing about Krishna. And here, like Brahmananda Swami was reading about Krishna's rescuing his beloved Rukmani, and Prabhupada interrupted him, and he had some more details, like mentioned that when Krishna was escaping in his chariot with Rukmani, and the other princes were attacking, and at that time Rukmani took the reins and driven the chariot, and Krishna then took his bow and arrows and defeated the opponents. The devotees present there were amazed on hearing that, because even though many of them are like students of the Krishna book, it was not mentioned in this much detail in the book, and they never heard about Rukmani taking the reins, and but Prabhupada assured them that Rukmani fearlessly driven Krishna's chariot during the fight. Also, like Prabhupada, on seeing that the Gurukula headmaster Dayananda, he stretched out his leg into a comfortable position. Prabhupada turned to him and mentioned that, asked him not to put his feet near Tulsi because she is a pure devotee. And also Brahmananda read a prayer in Krishna book representing Krishna as the creator of the material elements, and Prabhupada then for that he spoke, if we do not accept Krishna made the sky, then who made the sky? So then after, at this point, the guests and devotees looked up to the sky and then back to the Prabhupada. And Prabhupada mentioned that according to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna made the sky, and we should study like this. And sky is the greatest material thing, but he created it. So in this way, we should study Krishna, and not that we should not like studying Krishna with the gopis, and then everything will be misunderstood. So also he mentioned that the more you understand Krishna, the more you will become his follower. And unauthorized persons never pin Krishna creating the sky, but they always want to see Krishna dancing with the gopis, and they want to support their own lusty activities.
Santi?
According to Bhagavad, the two Dallas newspapers had covered Prabhupada's arrival. The Dallas Times Herald printed a photo of Srila Prabhupada seated and garlanded with roses, his high hand raised, his index finger extended, instructing barefoot Swami draws admiring Krishna crowd, the headline read. Aside from claiming that Srila Prabhupada was barefoot, actually he had worn shoes, but had removed them when sitting cross-legged. The article pointed out a controversy around the Krishna devotees in Dallas. The article cited ISKCON's injunction against officials of the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, who had forbidden them to distribute literature and take donations. On hearing the article, Srila Prabhupada had commented, "This is good literature. It should be encouraged. By reading it, people would become sane and they would understand their constitutional position. Otherwise, the people would go on being perturbed by crime and wondering what to do." Srila Prabhupada was particularly interested in the newspaper's version of his reply to the question about Indian politics. The Swami replied that Mrs. Gandhi is inclined to some spiritual understanding, and if she fully develops it, the situation will improve. Democracy is not much beneficial if its leaders have no spiritual values. Mahatma Gandhi was practically a dictator, but he was a man of a high moral character, so people accepted him. Dictatorship can be good, provided the dictator is spiritually developed. Srila Prabhupada was repeatedly being asked about Indira Gandhi. The US government was critical of her newly instituted emergency rule, and particularly in Chicago, the reporters had tried to construe Prabhupada's comments about women as criticism of Prime Minister Gandhi. Both in Chicago and Dallas, Srila Prabhupada had stressed that he not much concerned with politics, although he indicated that politics were useless without Krishna. Eager to keep good relations with the Indian government, Prabhupada did not like to speak publicly against India's leaders. He had often expressed a desire to meet with the Prime Minister to assure her of the good work the Krishna conscious movement was doing for the benefit of India and the whole world, and to request her assistance. In India, visas had always been a problem for the devotees. They had to continually leave the country and their service to renew their visas and then re-enter at great cost. Now, some devotees, especially in the Mayapur area, were being asked to leave the country because of America's stance against Indira Gandhi's political actions. Recently, Prabhupada had received word from the devotees in Delhi that they were trying to arrange such a meeting. So he liked the favorable statements on Indira Gandhi in the Dallas Times Herald and asked that the article be saved. The Dallas newspapers covered Prabhupada's arrival and also printed a photo of Srila Prabhupada. And also, they have described that he was barefoot, but actually he was wearing shoes and he took it off to sit down. And it also stated a controversy related to the distribution of the books and taking donations at the airport. And Prabhupada has commented that this is a good literature. On reading the article, he said it's good literature because the people will understand the position, and then it will also decrease the crime by knowing more about Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada was particularly interested in the newspaper's reply about a newspaper talking about his reply on politics, that Mrs. Indira Gandhi is inclined to some spiritual understanding, and if she fully develops it, the situation will improve. And he also quotes that Mahatma Gandhi was practically a dictator, but he was a man of high moral character. And even the dictatorship can be good when they are spiritually developed. And Prabhupada also talks about Indira Gandhi. And both in Chicago and Dallas, Srila Prabhupada has stressed that he was not much concerned with the politics. And although he indicated the politics, and he also indicated that the politics was useless without Krishna. And he also understood, I mean, he wanted to have a good relationship between with the Indian government as well. And his devotees promised, I mean, they are trying to make an arrangement so that Prabhupada can meet the Prime Minister of India. And also he was concerned about the visas of his devotees in India. They were taking a lot of money and they were having problems every time they have to have the visa. get a renewal of the visa, and it is becoming a problem for them. He liked the favorable statements on Indira Gandhi in Dallas Time Herald, and he asked the article to be saved.
Hmm. He could have a lot of influence on politics. He could have, but in short period of time, it's a big thing. What his success achieved, he got attracted the politicians. While walking near White Rock Lake the morning he was to leave for New Orleans, Srila Prabhupada dropped behind the main group of devotees and said to his servant, "I'm not feeling well." The few sannyasis close by pressed in near him with concern. Yesterday also, he added, "It is due to the heat, Srila Prabhupada. I do not know why, but now I am feeling headache and some spasm. Should we cancel that trip this morning?" Srila Prabhupada didn't answer. He admitted, however, the heat may have weakened his digestion. When asked if the food was to his liking, he replied, "Not, not very all right. Constantly change of hand is not good." Brahmananda Swami suggested that another difficulty for health was the constant flying. But when he again suggested postponing the flight to New Orleans, Prabhupada said, no, and continued forward. July 31st. The weather was stormy to en route. The weather was stormy to en route to New Orleans. Srila Prabhupada, in the first class section with Upendra, was looking out the window when the fasten your seat belt announcement came, just 10 minutes before the scheduled landing. Suddenly, the plane dropped violently. Passengers screamed and clutched their armrest, bracing themselves. Upendra, frightened, speechless, thought, "If I have to die, it's all right because Prabhupada is here." The downward plunge stopped abruptly, but then the plane began to lurch and roll, tossed by turbulent air currents. Overhead bins snapped open and articles fell out, bouncing off passengers and onto the floor. Srila Prabhupada turned to Upendra. "Why is it rocking?" he asked. "It is a storm," Upendra replied. He could see that Srila Prabhupada was calm. His expression was one of irritation, like over some minor incident, as when his lunch would be served late. In wind and downpour, the pilot finally touched the wheels into the runway, landing without mishap. A sigh rose from the passengers, then cheering and applause. Srila seemed unaffected. He asked Upendra how long a drive it would be to the temple. Okay, it's late. I won't read much. It's interesting going on. So Prabhupada is not feeling, seems very well. He's supposed to go to New Orleans also. In spite of all this sickness, he's decided to still go. He's been traveling. He's a change of cooks. A lot of health issues. It's not very good. I think by now he's already. We are reading him 70. Now back to 74 or 75. I forgot what year it is. If he's 74, he's already. How many years? Anyone remember? Almost close to 80, right? He's almost 78 or something by now. So he didn't cancel. On July 31st, he was going through New Orleans first class, and suddenly fasten seatbelt sign comes before his landing, and he sees that passengers are screaming, and there's a storm, and everything's shaking, things are falling apart, everybody's scared, and Brahmananda Swami is say, okay, even if I die, Prabhupada is there, But Prabhupada says, "Why it is rocking?" He's not very much impacted. So he said storm. So he was calm, and one of the irritation is like sometimes late lunches come. That's the expression all he had. So Then finally it landed, and Prabhupada is asking how far the temple is not. Everybody's feeling fine and peaceful, happy that everybody landed peacefully, where Prabhupada seems to be not very much impacted. So it's 8:43. We will continue tomorrow. Very, very grateful. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
I made one.